I'm Julie Parker. I'm 26 years old, and this Thanksgiving, for the first time in 2 years, I'm driving back to the house I used to call home. As the road curves through the hills of southeastern Ohio, the trees are bare, the sky a heavy slate gray, and my fingers won't stop tapping the steering wheel. I've rehearsed this return in my head 100 times, but now that I'm actually doing it, I feel like an imposter pulling up to a stage I no longer belong on. The last time I saw my family in person was a Thanksgiving just like this. I was still enrolled at Western Ohio University, still pretending I could keep up with tuition grades and expectations. But everything fell apart so fast. Tuition bills piled up, my parents kept saying they'd handle it, and I kept watching the stress creep into their voices. I dropped out quietly after sophomore year, packed up my things, and took the first barista job I could find. That turned into 2 jobs. Mornings at a cafe, nights bartending downtown. I got used to 4-hour naps and sore feet. Rent chewed up most of my paycheck, leaving me just enough for groceries and bus fare. I told myself it was temporary, that once things stabilized at home, I could go back. But weeks became months, and eventually I stopped answering calls, missed birthdays, and made excuses for holidays. It was easier than facing the shame. Now here I am, crossing the old railroad bridge outside of Brighton, the same town where I grew up. The town hasn't changed. The church still has the same marquee sign about gratitude, and the gas station still advertises homemade chili that I never saw anyone actually eat. But everything feels different. The silence in the car is loud with memories, and my stomach tightens with every mile I get closer to that white house with green shutters. I keep glancing at the clock on my dashboard. I'm exactly on time, which somehow feels worse than being late. There's no turning around now. My mom has probably set the table already. My dad might be outside pretending to rake leaves. My little brother might be home from college waiting with the same smug smile he always wore when he beat me at Monopoly. I don't know what to expect, but I know this. Whatever happens tonight, I won't be able to pretend anymore. My hands are trembling a little as I pull into the driveway. The porch light is on, casting a yellow glow across the front steps. The house looks just like it did in high school, like it's frozen in time, but as I park the car and kill the engine, the knot in my chest tells me that something is waiting inside. Something I'm not ready for. Something I can't avoid any longer. The door opened before I could even knock. My mom stood there with a dish towel in her hands and that half-nervous smile she always wore when company arrived. She pulled me into a hug that smelled like rosemary and sugar, then stepped back to look at me. Her eyes searched my face for something, maybe reassurance, maybe guilt. I smiled like I meant it. Inside, everything looked like a Norman Rockwell painting. The long dining table was set with good china-polished silverware and gold-trimmed cloth napkins folded into perfect triangles. A centerpiece of autumn leaves and tiny pumpkins sat between the mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce. It was almost too perfect, like a set that had been rehearsed all week. My dad gave me a bear hug that nearly lifted me off the ground. He looked thinner, a little older than I remembered. His hair was grayer at the temples, and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. My little brother Ben waved from the couch, phone in hand, dressed in khakis, and a crisp button-down shirt, like he'd just come from a job interview. He looked every bit the golden boy they had always hoped I would be. I took the seat next to Grandma Rose, who always insisted on sitting at the head of the table opposite my dad. She was dressed in her usual muted holiday colors, her silver hair tucked neatly under a wine-colored beret. Her lipstick matched the cranberry sauce. She gave me a quick once-over, then nodded with a tight smile. Her eyes lingered on mine longer than anyone else's had, like she was reading a page I hadn't meant to leave open. As we passed the dishes around, I found myself slipping into character. I talked about how busy school had been. I mentioned midterms and papers and a professor who'd really pushed me this semester. I nodded along as my mom bragged to my aunt about how well I was doing and how proud they were. I smiled. I lied. Ben started talking about his internship with a logistics firm in Columbus and how it might turn into a full-time offer. Everyone lit up with praise. My mom's eyes gleamed. My dad even toasted him with his wine glass. I forced a laugh. and took a sip of cider, the sweetness catching in my throat. Grandma Rose kept watching me, not unkindly, but like she knew I wasn't telling the truth. She asked questions gently, but they still made my palms sweat. What courses was I taking? How were my professors? Did I plan to apply to grad school after graduation? I answered smoothly, drawing from course catalogs and old memories, but I could feel my voice stretching thin. Around me, everyone looked so at ease. Laughter bubbled over gravy boats. Forks clinked against porcelain. My aunt passed around her famous sweet potato casserole, while someone teased Uncle Pete about forgetting the rolls in the oven again. It was the kind of moment I used to feel safe in. Now it felt like a stage play I hadn't been cast in. The warmth in the room pressed in on me, and not in a comforting way. It felt like too much air, too many eyes. My head buzzed with the hum of conversation, but none of it really reached me. I kept my smile fixed, nodding, laughing, and chewing when I had to. But I could feel the edges of myself fraying. Grandma Rose reached over and touched my hand lightly just for a second. Her touch was soft, but her look was piercing. There was no smile that time, just a quiet question in her gaze. She didn't ask it out loud. She didn't need to. It was already unraveling. She just knew I hadn't told them the real story. Not yet. Grandma Rose set down her wine glass and smiled in that soft, knowing way of hers. She was talking to my dad, complimenting the turkey, and then she turned to me and said it like it was nothing. "So glad your parents are still handling your tuition. She said college is so expensive these days." Just like that. A sentence so casual, so offhanded, it sliced straight through the center of the room. I froze. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I blinked once, then twice, trying to make sure I'd heard her right. My heartbeat spiked so fast it felt like I was underwater hearing muffled voices and clinking silverware in some other world. A thick silence fell around me, the kind that makes your skin itch. "What tuition?" My voice came out thin but sharp. My dad dropped his knife. My mom suddenly found something very interesting about her napkin. Ben sat back, eyes wide, chewing stopped mid-bite. Grandma's smile faltered. I repeated it louder. "What tuition are they paying?" My mom's hand went to her throat like she'd been caught mid-gasp. My dad tried to say something, but it came out as a cough. I pushed back my chair and stood up. My legs were shaking, but I couldn't sit still. I looked at them both, waiting for someone to explain to fix what just broke. But no one said a word. Grandma leaned forward, her brows drawn together now. Julie said slowly, "I've seen the statements. The tuition payments go out regularly. I made sure your trust was covering it." "My trust." I laughed, but it came out too sharp. "I dropped out 2 years ago. I've been working 2 jobs. There is no tuition to pay?" The silence that followed hit like a wave, sucking all the warmth from the room. My dad looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 seconds. My mom covered her mouth. I turned to them again, my voice shaking now louder. "You knew I wasn't in school. You knew I was working to help us. What have you been paying with my name?" My father finally spoke, his voice rough and low. "This isn't the time." I cut him off. "Don't you dare. What loans are you paying in my name? What trust is Grandma talking about? Have you been lying to her, to me?" Tears welled up in my mom's eyes, but I didn't care. I felt heat rising through my chest, fury mixing with shame, disbelief cracking open into something darker. Grandma stood up now slowly but with purpose. Her face was hard. "Tell her the truth, Robert, or I will." My dad sank back in his chair like he'd been punched. He looked over at my mom. She gave him the smallest nod. He rubbed his hands together and cleared his throat. "There's a trust," he said finally, "set up by your grandparents for college. But we had some financial setbacks." My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So you took it. You took money, meant for my education, and used it anyway." My mom's voice cracked. "We meant to put it back. We just needed it to get by." "You let me quit school thinking I was helping you while you drained a fund that could have saved me." Ben stood too, stepping back from the table. "Did you use her trust?" He looked horrified. Did you use mine? My dad shook his head. No, yours is untouched. Of course it is, I snapped, because I'm the older daughter, the expendable one, the helper, the one you let suffer while you kept the lie going. My mom started crying, but I didn't sit down. I couldn't. The room felt like it was spinning. Grandma walked around the table and put a hand on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I had no idea, but I barely heard her. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears, the betrayal echoing in every heartbeat. I backed away slowly, every eye in the room on me. My plate was untouched. My cider had gone warm. The perfect dinner was broken. I turned toward the door without a word. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to be anywhere but here. I needed to breathe. The cold air outside had helped, but not enough. My heart was still pounding, my thoughts still racing in every direction. I slipped back into the house through the side door, hoping no one would notice. The hallway was quiet, the voices from the dining room now a low murmur behind closed doors. I passed the family photos lining the wall. School portraits, vacations, holidays, all the versions of me that believed my parents would always have my back. At the end of the hall, my dad's office door was slightly open. That was strange. He always kept it closed during gatherings. Like everything else, it had a place, a boundary. I hesitated for a second, then stepped inside. I told myself I just needed a few minutes alone. The office smelled like old paper and lemon polish. His desk was cluttered in a way that didn't match the rest of the house, open folders, receipts, and a legal pad covered in numbers. I sank into the leather chair and let the silence settle. That's when I saw the envelope. My name was typed neatly on the top of a bank statement. I froze. Something in me said not to look, but my fingers moved anyway. There were monthly withdrawals listed under the label tuition disbursement. My name was on every line. I hadn't been in school for over 2 years. The next page had the letterhead from a financial institution I didn't recognize. At the top in bold it read, Parker Family Educational Trust. My mouth went dry. I flipped through page after page, each one documenting money being moved. Notes scribbled in my dad's handwriting. Tuition, housing, books, all lies. The weight of it hit slowly. There was money, my money. A fund meant for my education. Not just help, not just a loan. A gift I didn't know existed, and they had been using it behind my back. While I served coffee at 6 a.m. and wiped down sticky bar counters at midnight, they had kept this secret like it was nothing. I couldn't move. My hands trembled as I stacked the papers back together. Somewhere behind me, a door creaked. A voice called my name. I swallowed hard, stood up, and quietly stepped out of the room, my heart pounding louder than my footsteps. I had just stepped back into the dining room when I saw her. Grandma Rose was standing, hands planted firmly on the edge of the table, her face pale but steady. The air was thick, the kind that wraps around your throat and won't let go. My parents sat like statues, their eyes locked on their plates, but they knew it was coming. She was done pretending. Tell her, she said to my father, her voice low but sharp as glass. Tell her what you did, or I will. My dad opened his mouth, closed it again, and then looked at my mom. She gave him a tiny nod, the kind you give when you're out of options. He took a breath and finally spoke. It started a few years ago, he said. The firm cut his salary. They fell behind on the mortgage. He said it felt like drowning. The trust was there, he rationalized. Just a little at first. Just until they caught up. But they didn't catch up. They just kept taking. My mother's voice cracked when she added her part. The spending, the credit cards, the secrets. She said she was ashamed. She said she never meant for it to get this far. But it had. Way too far. I stood frozen, arms tight across my chest. I wanted to scream. You let me drop out. You let me work until I could barely stand. You let me believe I was saving us while you were taking from me behind my back. Ben stood up slowly, looking between them. Did you use mine too? He asked. My dad shook his head. No, only Julie's. We couldn't touch yours. Grandma turned to them, eyes blazing now. You let your daughter suffer. You let her believe she was a burden while you drained her future. And you lied to me. She turned back to me, then her voice breaking. I am so sorry, Julie. I thought you were still in school. I thought they were doing right by you. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My trust was gone. My future twisted into someone else's debt. And the people who were supposed to protect me had been the ones stealing from me all along. I didn't remember grabbing my coat, but I must have, because I was outside before I knew it, the wind biting through the sleeves like needles. The night was quiet, too quiet, except for the soft crunch of frozen leaves beneath my boots. My breath came out in sharp white bursts, matching the panic still rising in my chest. I walked until the porch light was just a blur behind me. I stopped by my car, not to leave, just to feel like I could. My hands trembled as I gripped the handle, grounding myself with the cold metal. Everything felt raw. My body buzzed with anger, confusion, and betrayal. I had no plan. I just knew I couldn't be in that house 1 second longer. The door opened again, and I heard hurried steps behind me. Ben's voice cut through the silence, quiet but urgent. He called my name and asked me to wait. I turned only halfway, not ready to face him fully. He looked shaken, his breath catching no coat, just that pressed shirt from dinner. He told me he had no idea about the trust, about the money, about any of it. He said he thought I was still in school, thought I just didn't want to come home. He believed the stories they told him. I wanted to scream again, but I didn't. He looked like he meant it, and I could see the guilt in his face, the same kind I used to wear. Then, Grandma Rose appeared, her coat buttoned, tight hair wrapped in a scarf, faced sternly against the cold. She didn't hesitate, just walked up to us like she had something she'd been waiting to say. She told me she called the bank earlier that week. She had questions of her own, and tonight confirmed all of them. There's still $60,000 left, she said. It's not everything you were meant to have, but it's something, and it's yours. I've already started the paperwork to remove your parents as trustees. From now on, you'll control every cent. I didn't know what to say. The weight of that information settled on me slowly, heavier than I expected. I had money. I had control. I had a choice again. For the first time in years, the ground beneath me felt solid. I wasn't whole, but I wasn't powerless either. And that, maybe more than anything, was the start of healing. The morning light crept through the blinds of my old bedroom, casting familiar stripes across the faded posters still pinned to the walls. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything that had unraveled the night before. The air was still the house, too quiet for the day after Thanksgiving. No smell of coffee, no rustling of pots in the kitchen. Just silence. Eventually, I padded down the hallway in socks that no longer fit quite right. My mom was at the table with her hands wrapped around a mug, her face drawn and pale. My dad sat across from her, eyes red-rimmed, a man who looked like he hadn't slept at all. They both looked up when I entered, but didn't say anything right away. For the first time, they seemed unsure of what they were allowed to say. I sat down, slowly waiting. It was my dad who finally spoke. He apologized. Really apologized. No excuses, no softening of the truth. He said he had failed, not just as a father, but as a protector. He explained how the company cut his salary, how he tried to hide it, and how the debt crept in faster than he could manage. My mom followed. She talked about the anxiety, the shopping addiction she hadn't named until now. About how the spending filled a hole she didn't understand until it was too deep. She admitted she had lied to both of them too. She felt like she was spiraling and didn't know how to stop. I didn't interrupt. I just listened because part of me needed to hear it. Even if it didn't fix anything, they said they wanted to sell the house. Downsize. Start repaying the trust with interest. They'd already contacted a financial advisor. My mom had scheduled an appointment with a therapist. They didn't ask for forgiveness. They just said they wanted to begin making it right if I'd let them. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was the only adult in the room. Something cold had cracked, and through it, something warm had started to seep back in. After they finished speaking, the room went quiet again. Not heavy, Not sharp like last night, but still thick with everything unsaid. I sat there staring into my untouched cup of tea, feeling the weight of what they'd asked for without asking. Forgiveness doesn't come in one sitting, and trust once broken doesn't rebuild on promises alone. I thought about the years I'd lost, the silence I'd lived in the jobs I took, and the choices I made believed I was alone. Part of me wanted to scream to make them feel even a fraction of what I had felt. But another part, quieter but stronger, just wanted to move forward. Do not forget, not erase. Just release. I told them I wasn't ready to forgive. I didn't know when or if that would happen. But I wasn't going to shut the door either. I said I needed space-time and truth. No more pretending. No more performative smiles. I wouldn't lie to make them feel better, and I wouldn't carry their shame like it belonged to me. They nodded. They didn't argue. That mattered. For the first time, it felt like they were really listening. And for me, that was enough. I stood from the table with no drama, no anger left to throw. Just a quiet resolve that I would live differently now. On my terms. With honesty and choice. The life ahead of me might still be uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was mine to shape. 6 months later, the air feels different. I wake up in a small apartment just outside of Cincinnati, the morning sun slipping through cheap blinds, casting soft light across mismatched furniture, and a few plants I'm somehow managing to keep alive. My roommate Nina is still asleep in the next room, probably buried under a mountain of fleece blankets and open textbooks. We met through a student forum when I re-enrolled at the local community college. She's chaotic, hilarious, and kind in a way that doesn't require explanation. Living here feels like breathing again. I'm taking 3 classes this semester and working part-time as a research assistant in the sociology department. The hours aren't perfect, but they're mine. I help design surveys and analyze community health data, and for the first time in years, I feel like my mind is stretching again. There are late nights and early alarms, but also moments where I catch myself smiling just because I'm doing something that matters. My relationship with Ben has changed too. We talk more now. Real talks, not just surface stuff. He visits sometimes on weekends, brings coffee, and helps me fix things around the apartment. He told me he started looking into student finance laws and wants to write something about financial abuse and trust management. I don't know if he means it, but I told him to go for it. He's trying. That counts. My parents are still working through it. They sold the house in March, just like they said they would. They've paid back some of what they took and are on a strict repayment plan for the rest. Every month, they send an update. Not just money, an actual update. Where they're at emotionally, what they're learning in therapy, what they're doing differently. We haven't had a big reunion, but we've had phone calls, a few honest ones. I don't rush them, and I don't let guilt push me toward them either. Grandma Rose and I talk every week. She sends me articles, podcasts, and sometimes just handwritten notes about little things she's noticed in her garden. She never asks questions she knows I'm not ready to answer. She listens. She always has. Family therapy became a condition for all of us if we wanted to move forward. We do sessions once a month, sometimes more. It's not perfect. There are days I leave drained and resentful. But there are also breakthroughs. Moments where I see the shape of something better, even if we're not there yet. Most importantly, I've learned how to set boundaries. Not in a dramatic way, just calmly, clearly. I say no when I need to. I leave when it gets too heavy. I don't apologize for needing space or for protecting my peace. That's something school never taught me, something I had to earn the hard way. I don't know what's next. I have dreams, but I'm not chasing them out of fear anymore. I'm building toward them. Brick by brick, day by day. And for the first time in a long time, I like the life I'm building. It's mine. Flawed, unfinished, but honest. And that feels like a beginning worth showing up for. Looking back, I still remember the exact moment everything cracked. That one sentence casually spoken over dinner opened a door I hadn't even known was there. It let in all the truth I'd been blind to. And for a long time, that truth hurt more than any lie ever had. But over time, it became something else. It became the foundation for everything I've rebuilt since. I used to think control was about planning every step. Now I know it's about reclaiming your voice when it's been taken. It's about standing in the mess and saying, "This happened, and I'm still here." Forgiveness didn't come easily, and it still isn't whole. But I've learned that forgiveness isn't always about them. Sometimes, it's about freeing yourself from carrying their damage. The healing didn't come in grand moments. It came in quietly once. In the early mornings, I walked to class. In texts from my brother just checking in. In conversations with Grandma Rose where I didn't have to explain everything. In setting boundaries without guilt. In saying no and meaning it. That's where the change really lived. I see my parents differently now. Not just as the people who hurt me, but as people who got lost in their own fear. It doesn't excuse what they did, but it helps me understand it. And understanding gives me space to breathe again. To talk. To maybe someday fully forgive. There's a strange power in choosing your own story. In saying this is where it broke, and this is how I started again. I'm still writing mine. It's not perfect, but it's mine. I don't need to be the daughter they wanted me to be. I just need to be who I am, and that's enough. So, here I am, standing in the middle of my life, still learning, still healing, still showing up. And if you've ever been in a place like mine, where the people who were supposed to protect you became the ones who hurt you most, I want you to know something. You're allowed to stop pretending. You're allowed to tell the truth. And you're allowed to begin again. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been hurt by someone you loved deeply but chose the truth anyway, just to find your way back to yourself?